In 1901, a 38-year-old man walked into a private dinner at the University Club in New York.
Right.
And sitting at that table was J.P. Morgan, who was, arguably the most intimidating and powerful financial figure on the planet at the time.
Without a doubt, he was the apex predator of Wall Street.
Exactly. But this young man, he didn't bring spreadsheets to this dinner. He didn't bring physical assets or collateral.
Yep.
He brought an idea that existed purely in his imagination. It was this vision for a massive consolidated steel empire.
And he pitched it with just, absolute unshakable conviction.
Yeah, for 80 minutes straight. And by the time coffee was served, J.P. Morgan agreed to buy out Andrew Carnegie and create United States Steel, which was a $600 million corporation.
Which is just a staggering amount of money. That's $600 million in 1901.
It's one of the most legendary deals in American business history.
It really is. And the crazy thing is, the man who made that pitch, Charles M. Schwab, he didn't pull off that deal because he was the smartest metallurgist in the country.
Right.
He pulled it off because he had mastered a very specific, highly reproducible psychological operating system.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking on our deep dive today. We're looking at the actual mechanics of human potential.
Because you see this all the time, right? You can take two founders or two investors or two executives, put them in the exact same economic conditions with the exact same resources.
And one builds an absolute empire, like Schwab did, and the other goes completely bankrupt.
Exactly. And usually when we look for reasons why that happens, we look at external factors. We look at market timing or interest rates or supply chain issues.
Because we like things to be tangible. We want something we can measure.
Right. We want a broken bone and an X-ray to prove it. But when you step into the world of high performance and wealth creation, you are no longer measuring tangible assets.
You're measuring the architecture of the human mind.
Yes. And that's an area where the waters get incredibly muddy, because now you are dealing with belief and resilience and perception.
So to navigate those muddy waters today, we're taking a deep dive into what is arguably the foundational text of modern wealth building.
The absolute blueprint.
We are looking at excerpts and original research from the 1937 classic Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Now, before you roll your eyes,
Right.
assuming we're about to do some seminar on getting lucky or wishing upon a star, we need to set the record straight on what this source material actually is.
Because the sheer scale of the research behind this is staggering.
Context is everything here. This isn't just a collection of nice motivational ideas. It is the synthesis of 25 years of intensive clinical analysis.
25 years.
Yeah. The author spent over 2 decades interviewing and observing more than 500 of America's wealthiest and most successful men.
We're talking about Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford. The titans who literally built the industrial infrastructure of the United States.
So our mission today is to strip away all the myths. We want to extract the actual psychological frameworks and the strategic engines that these titans used.
Right, because whether you are listening to this right now while trying to secure seed funding for a tech startup, or maybe you're scaling up the corporate ladder at a Fortune 500 company.
Or aggressively planning your financial independence through index funds and real estate.
Exactly. These principles are pitched as the ultimate operating system for high performance.
But the core thesis of this text is frequently misunderstood by modern readers. They tend to lump it in with cheap self-help.
Which it is not.
It is not a mystical get-rich-quick scheme at all. It is a rigorous textbook on individual achievement.
The entire objective is to shift the reader from what the author calls a failure consciousness to a success consciousness.
And it argues, quite aggressively actually, that wealth is not a mathematical equation. It is fundamentally a state of mind.
But it's a state of mind that operates by very specific rules. Which brings us to the starting point of all achievement, according to the research. Right, desire. But the text draws a massive line in the sand right out of the gate here. This cannot be a mere wish.
Because everyone wishes for more money. Wishing is passive.
What is required is a burning obsession.
A wish doesn't change your behavior. An obsession dictates every single action you take. It completely alters your risk profile.
And the text illustrates this beautifully with the story of Edwin C. Barnes, which perfectly captures the psychology of an early-stage startup founder today.
Barnes is a fascinating case study. He gets this desire, this burning obsession, but it's highly specific.
Right. He didn't just want a job working for Thomas Edison. He wanted to be a business partner with Thomas Edison.
Which, if you look at the reality of his situation, was completely absurd.
Oh, total delusion. I mean, he had no money. He didn't know Edison. He didn't even have enough cash for a passenger train ticket.
So he travels to Orange, New Jersey by blind baggage.
Meaning he basically snuck onto a freight train.
Yeah. And he walks into Edison's laboratory looking like an absolute tramp.
But Edison later noted that while he looked like a tramp, there was something in his expression that showed he was determined to get what he came after.
Because he had literally thought himself into a partnership before he even opened his mouth.
And here is where the concept of the burning obsession actually meets business strategy. Because Barnes didn't walk in and immediately get a partnership.
Of course not. He got a menial job at a nominal wage.
Months go by, he is sweeping floors.
And most people would let their ego take over there and quit, feeling undervalued.
Right, they'd say, I'm too good for this.
But Barnes is just using this as a vantage point. He's inside the walls, and then the opportunity arrives. But it arrives disguised as a complete failure.
This is such a classic business pivot. Edison invents this dictating machine, the Ediphone, but his own sales team hates it.
They tell him it's a dud, that it will never sell.
But Barnes sees the gap. He steps up, tells Edison he can sell it, and he absolutely crushes it.
He sells it so well that he gets a national distribution contract. They even created the slogan made by Edison and installed by Barnes.
Which is incredible. And the text notes that opportunity often slips in through the back door, disguised as misfortune or temporary defeat.
Barnes succeeded because he'd cut off all avenues of retreat. He burned his boats. It was Edison's partner or nothing.
Think about modern entrepreneurs. The ones who succeed often don't have a plan B.
Exactly. If you have a comfortable corporate safety net to fall back on, the moment the startup gets incredibly difficult, and it always does, you fall back into the net.
You take the easy way out.
Barnes had no net.
And the inverse of that obsession is what happens when you do have a net or when you simply lose the conviction to keep pushing.
And the source provides a great cautionary tale for this.
The story of R.U. Darby and being 3 feet from gold.
This is an absolute masterclass in the danger of quitting.
Yeah.
And you see it happen every single day in Silicon Valley and on Wall Street.
So Darby's uncle gets gold fever, goes west, stakes a claim, and strikes gold.
But it's deep underground. He needs heavy machinery to bring the ore to the surface.
Right, so he quietly goes back to Maryland, raises money from his relatives, including young Darby, buys the heavy machinery, and heads back.
They mine the first car of ore. Things are looking great. They're about to clear their debts and make an absolute killing.
And then the vein of gold just disappears.
The underlying geology literally shifted, and their pot of gold vanished.
They drill and drill, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, just burning through capital, but they find nothing.
So what do? They quit?
They sell all this expensive machinery to a local junk man for a few $100s and take the train home in complete defeat.
But the junk man doesn't just start melting down the machines for scrap. He does something incredibly intelligent.
He hires a mining engineer to come look at the mine.
And the engineer says the project failed because the original owners were not familiar with fault lines.
He runs the calculations and tells the junk man, you will find the vein just 3 feet from where the Darbys stopped drilling.
And that is exactly where they found it.
3 feet away.
The junk man pulled millions of dollars out of that mine because he understood one simple business principle: seek expert counsel before giving up.
The implication here for anyone building a business is profound. Temporary defeat is not permanent failure.
A failed product launch or a brutal quarterly earnings report does not mean the business model is dead.
Most entrepreneurs pivot or quit right before the breakthrough because they lack specialized counsel.
They literally stop 3 feet from the gold.
But Darby learned from this. He eventually paid back all the money he lost to his relatives, and he went on to build a massive fortune in the life insurance business.
Because his entire sales philosophy was driven by the realization that he would never stop just because a client said no.
He constantly remembered that he had stopped 3 feet from gold.
So we have these two extremes, right? The obsession that creates partnerships out of thin air, and the lack of specialized knowledge that causes people to quit right before the finish line.
So how do you actually manufacture that obsession? I mean, the source actually breaks down exactly how to transmute raw desire into physical money, into reality.
It gives 6 very specific practical steps.
Let me run through these real quick. Step 1, Fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. Not, I want plenty of money, but a specific number.
It has to be quantifiable.
Right. Step 2, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for this money. Step 3, establish a definite date when you intend to possess it.
Hard deadline.
Step 4, create a definite plan for carrying it out and begin at once, whether you are ready or not.
That's the execution phase.
Step 5, write all of this down clearly. And Step 6, read your written statement aloud twice daily, once before bed, once waking up.
And as you read, you have to see, feel, and believe yourself already in possession of the money.
Now, wait a minute. Reading a statement to yourself in the mirror twice a day? Trying to feel the money?
I know where you're going with this.
I mean, that sounds like cheap social media manifesting. Does the science actually back that up for an ambitious professional, let's say? It feels completely detached from the hard mechanics of building a business.
I completely understand the skepticism. If you read that literalistically, it sounds like magical thinking.
Like you're going to chant in the mirror and a venture capitalist is going to drop a term sheet down your chimney.
Exactly. But if we analyze what is actually happening neurologically and psychologically, it's highly practical.
Yeah.
It's psychological priming.
Break that down for me. How is this different from just wishing really hard?
Think of the human brain as an incredibly advanced filtering system. We are bombarded with millions of bits of sensory data, market trends, and passing conversations every single day.
Sure.
If we consciously processed all of it, our nervous systems would collapse.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain has a biological filter, the reticular activating system, or RAS.
The RAS, yeah.
Its entire job is to filter out everything except what it believes is important to your survival or your stated goals. When you define a highly specific goal, write it down, and obsess over it twice a day with intense emotional focus, you are forcibly reprogramming that biological filter.
Oh, wow. So you're manually calibrating your radar.
Exactly.
You're telling your brain this specific outcome is the most important data point in my world right now.
Precisely. You are commanding your subconscious to spot opportunities, resources, and connections that you would normally walk right past.
That makes total sense.
When you walk into a networking event, instead of just seeing a room full of people, your brain is actively hunting for the specific engineer you need or the specific investor who aligns with your thesis.
You're not magically summoning money out of thin air. You are sharpening your perception so acutely that you notice the fault lines that other people completely ignore.
Yes. But setting that target doesn't work if you fundamentally don't believe you can hit it.
Right. Desire without belief is just daydreaming, which is the perfect bridge to the mechanism that actually turns this calibrated desire into reality.
Faith and autosuggestion.
This is where the philosophy deepens significantly. The text defines faith not in a traditional theological sense, but as the head chemist of the mind.
It is a cognitive state that you can voluntarily induce.
And the tool to induce it is what Hill calls autosuggestion,
which is the process of voluntarily feeding your subconscious mind with creative, purposeful thoughts, rather than leaving it unguarded to be choked by the weeds of negative external influences.
The metaphor of a garden is incredibly apt here.
It is. Your subconscious mind is completely impartial. It takes any order given to it in absolute faith and acts upon it.
It makes absolutely no distinction between constructive and destructive thoughts.
None at all. If you plant seeds of fear, doubt, and poverty, which is what most people do when they obsess over the news or economic downturns, the subconscious will diligently work to manifest those realities.
It will literally find reasons for you to fail.
It's an impartial execution engine.
Completely impartial. And to show how powerful this mechanism is when harnessed correctly, let's go back to Charles M. Schwab and the creation of United States Steel.
Right. The billion-dollar pitch.
Schwab didn't just have a spreadsheet detailing a potential steel conglomerate. He had absolute, unshakable faith in the inevitability of it.
He had to pitch J.P. Morgan, a man who was famous for tearing executives apart.
Morgan was the apex predator. If Schwab walked into that room with even a fraction of a percent of doubt, Morgan would have smelled it and the deal would have been dead before the appetizers were cleared.
Schwab's faith was so total that it became infectious. He effectively transferred his reality into J.P. Morgan's mind.
He created a $600 million reality out of an intangible thought backed by unyielding faith.
And the text even speculates on this kind of power at a massive scale, bringing up Mahatma Gandhi.
Which is wild. Finding Gandhi in a text analyzing American millionaires is surprising.
It is, but it perfectly illustrates the concept of belief as leverage. Gandhi's immense power wasn't military. He had no weapons, no massive fortune.
His power was his ability to unite 200 million minds using the pure power of shared faith.
If we look at modern corporate leadership, it's the exact same dynamic. A modern CEO's absolute conviction is often the only thing that aligns a massive, globally distributed workforce to execute a seemingly impossible vision.
Think about Steve Jobs when he returned to Apple in 1997.
Great example.
The company was weeks away from bankruptcy. The market had completely lost faith. But Jobs had this reality distortion field, which is exactly what we were talking about here.
He had such absolute faith in what Apple could be that he forced his engineers, his board, and eventually the entire consumer market to believe it too.
But how do you develop that? I mean, it is incredibly hard to just decide to have faith when you're staring down a brutal reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Say you're a founder facing a massive market downturn, your startup's runway is shrinking to zero, and your board is panicking. How do you just have faith?
Hill argues that faith isn't a switch you flip. It is built through repetition, auto-suggestion.
When you are terrified, your subconscious is feeding on fear.
You have to actively intercept that loop. You must literally deceive your subconscious mind through repetition until the belief becomes real. You act as if you already possess the outcome you want.
And the sources share a deeply personal story from the author to prove how far this biological reprogramming can go. It's about his own son, Blair.
It's a profound medical case study. Blair was born without physical ears. He had no auditory organs.
The doctor said he would be deaf and mute for life.
But the author, Napoleon Hill, refused to accept that reality. He used autosuggestion to implant a burning desire in the boy to hear.
He repeatedly told him, day after day, year after year, that his handicap was actually a massive asset.
That he would have a unique advantage in the world because people would naturally want to help him.
He essentially installed a software program of absolute faith into the boy's subconscious mind before the boy was old enough to absorb the limiting beliefs of the outside world.
He bypassed the boy's critical faculty.
And the result was astonishing. The boy eventually gained normal hearing capabilities through an early experimental bone conduction device.
Because his mind had been primed for years to believe he would hear, the moment the technology caught up, he seized it.
And he turned his unique story into a highly successful career helping others with hearing loss. He transmuted a severe physical handicap into his greatest professional asset.
Because the subconscious mind was constantly fed the instruction you will hear, and this is an advantage. It organized his entire life around that single truth.
But belief alone doesn't build the steel mill. Faith doesn't write the code for a new software platform.
No, you need tools.
Which brings us to the transition from internal psychology to external mechanics, specialized knowledge, and imagination.
The author completely demolishes the traditional academic definition of education here, and he uses Henry Ford to do it.
During World War I, a Chicago newspaper called Ford an ignorant pacifist.
And Ford sued them for libel.
Right. In court, the newspaper's lawyers tried to prove to the jury that Ford was actually ignorant by putting him on the stand and interrogating him with an endless series of obscure general knowledge questions.
They asked him things like, how many soldiers did the British send to America to put down the rebellion of 1776?
They were trying to humiliate him based on a traditional, trivia-based model of intelligence.
Ford entertains this for a while, and then he finally gets annoyed.
He leans forward and says, if I should really want to answer the foolish question you have just asked, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk.
And by pushing the right button, I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire.
He says, now, will you kindly tell me why I should clutter up my mind with general knowledge when I have men around me who can supply any knowledge I require?
The courtroom went silent because Ford articulated the modern capitalist reality. General knowledge, no matter how vast, is virtually useless for wealth accumulation.
You do not get paid for what you know. You get paid for how you organize specialized knowledge into definite plans of action.
You do not need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to be the general contractor of knowledge.
Think about how true this is in the age of AI. ChatGPT has all the general knowledge in the history of humanity. Knowing facts is a completely commoditized skill.
Exactly. A tech founder today doesn't need to know how to code the back-end software, design the microchips, and run the complex tax accounting.
If they tried to do all that, the company would fail.
They just need to know how to push the right buttons, hire the right specialists, and organize that talent toward a singular vision.
Education isn't about memorization, it's about the ability to utilize resources.
But once you have organized that specialized knowledge, you need a catalyst to make it valuable. You need imagination.
Hill calls imagination the workshop of the mind, and he breaks this down with the story of the enchanted kettle.
This is the origin story of Coca-Cola, which is a masterclass in adding imagination to specialized knowledge.
Asa Candler, a young drug clerk, buys an old brass kettle, a wooden paddle, and a secret formula from a country doctor for $500.
Now, the formula is just specialized knowledge. It's chemistry. It's a headache remedy.
But Candler adds the secret ingredient.
He adds imagination. He realizes that the value isn't in curing a headache. The value is in creating a desirable global beverage.
He figures out how to market it, how to scale it, how to turn a medicinal syrup into a lifestyle brand.
He organized the knowledge and used his imagination to create an entirely new industry.
We see the exact same principle in the story of Dr. Frank Gonzalez.
Oh, the $1 Million Sermon.
Yeah, he was a clergyman who desperately wanted $1 million to start a new kind of technical college.
For 2 years, he did nothing but think about it.
Yeah.
He had the desire, but no plan, no action.
Until he made a definite decision, he decided, I will get this $1 million within a week.
He wrote a sermon titled, What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million. And he preached it with absolute conviction.
And Philip D. Armour, the wealthy meatpacking tycoon, was sitting in the audience.
Armour walked up after the sermon and said, I believe you could do it. I will give you the $1 million.
The takeaway here is vital for anyone trying to raise capital today. Capital, whether it's Philip Armour's millions in the 1890s or a modern venture capital fund on Sand Hill Road, is always searching for organized, imaginative plans.
Money is inert. It requires the imagination of a driven individual to give it life and motion.
Investors are not looking for passive ideas. They are looking for a general contractor of knowledge who has the imagination to execute.
So you have the knowledge, you have the imagination, you have the burning desire. Why do so many people still fail?
Organizing all of that requires a blueprint, and execution is the crucible where most people melt. The text is very pragmatic here. You must create a practical plan.
But it also acknowledges reality. Your first plan will probably fail. And if it does, you must replace it immediately.
The example given is Samuel Insull. He built a $100 million public utilities empire.
But during the Great Depression, the macroeconomic environment fundamentally changed. His original plans failed.
And instead of adapting and creating new plans, he froze.
He tried to force the old plan into a new reality. He didn't pivot, and he lost the entire fortune.
It highlights a harsh truth about capitalistic systems. The market doesn't care about your past success, your pedigree, or your good intentions.
If your plan is no longer sound, you must rebuild it.
To help with this, the author provides a brutal self-audit, the 30 major causes of failure.
Reading through this list is deeply uncomfortable because it forces deep accountability. It strips away all the external excuses we use.
Let's unpack a few of the most critical ones that plague modern professionals.
The first one that jumps out is the lack of a well-defined purpose.
If you don't know exactly what you are aiming for, you will dissipate your energy in 100 different directions.
It's the entrepreneur who is trying to build 3 different startups at the same time.
They all fail because none of them receive the critical mass of focus required to break through.
Then there is the lack of self-discipline. This comes down to emotional and behavioral regulation.
Can you delay gratification? Can you do the boring, tedious work of building systems when you'd rather be doing the exciting work of pitching the vision?
Indecision is another massive one. We see this in corporate middle management all the time.
People who are so afraid of making the wrong choice that they make no choice at all, which is, ironically, the worst choice you can make.
And then there's the habit of indiscriminate spending.
If you cannot manage $1,000, you cannot manage a $10 million Series A round. Capital efficiency is a habit, not a mathematical outcome.
These are all internal controls. Capitalistic America guarantees the opportunity to render useful service, but it absolutely demands equivalent value in return.
Wanting money and being worth money are two entirely different things.
Am I actually rendering a service that the market values? Am I delivering the best quality and quantity of service?
There is a list of 28 questions for self-analysis in the text that listeners should honestly ask themselves.
You have to evaluate yourself as a business. Are you a product the market actually wants to buy?
Now, there is one cause of failure on that list that always catches people off guard because it seems so out of place in a business context.
Yes, the wrong selection of a mate in marriage.
When you are reading about stock syndicates and industrial monopolies, Suddenly pivoting to marital advice feels jarring. Why is that in a textbook about wealth accumulation?
Because it is fundamentally an issue of cognitive load and energy allocation.
If we look at the psychology of high performance, mental energy is your most precious resource. It is highly finite.
A misaligned home life, a marriage filled with constant friction, resentment, or a lack of shared vision, acts as a massive energy leak.
It drains the exact mental and emotional bandwidth required to maintain faith, handle temporary defeat, and execute complex plans in the market.
You cannot fight a war in the boardroom if you are fighting a war in your living room.
Exactly. Harmony in your personal life is a prerequisite for sustained professional power.
If you are constantly managing domestic crisis, you have nothing left in the tank for the business.
The antidote to that failure, the cure for procrastination and indecision, is what Hill calls the seventh step to Rich's decision.
The author's analysis of decision is one of the most striking parts of the research. After analyzing hundreds of millionaires, he found a universal pattern regarding how they interact with time and choice.
The wealthy make decisions incredibly quickly, and they change them, if at all, very slowly.
And the people who fail do the exact opposite. They make decisions very slowly, agonizing over every detail.
And once they finally make a choice, they change their minds rapidly and frequently at the first sign of friction.
Decisiveness is a muscle. The example the text uses is the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Talk about high stakes.
They made a decision that literally staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on a single document.
If they lost the war, they wouldn't just lose their investments. They would hang for treason. That is the ultimate definiteness of decision.
And backing up that level of decision requires persistence.
The author defines persistence simply as willpower. It is the sustained effort necessary to induce faith when the physical evidence is telling you to quit.
We all suffer from a lack of persistence at times. The symptoms are universal: blaming others for our mistakes, searching for alibis, and the fear of criticism.
But to sustain that persistence over a long timeline, you cannot rely entirely on your own willpower. You need infrastructure.
You need what the book famously calls the mastermind.
This concept has been heavily co-opted by modern internet marketers, but the original definition is profound.
The mastermind is defined as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people in a spirit of perfect harmony toward a definite purpose.
Andrew Carnegie attributed his entire fortune to his mastermind group of about 50 men.
Carnegie famously didn't know much about the technical aspects of manufacturing steel, but his group collectively possessed every piece of specialized knowledge required.
The concept goes deeper than just assembling an executive team. The author argues that when two minds come together in perfect harmony, they create a third, invisible, intangible force, which is the mastermind itself.
In modern terms, we see this in brilliant startup co-founders. Think of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, or Paul Allen and Bill Gates.
You need cognitive diversity. One person is the visionary, the other is the operator, but you must have absolute harmony in your core purpose.
If there is friction in the purpose, the mastermind dissolves and the company fractures.
There is a very specific warning Hill gives regarding the mastermind.
Yeah, this is crucial.
He says you meet this group, but he explicitly warns you to keep your plans secret from everyone except your mastermind group.
He literally says, keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. The text is exceptionally strict about this.
Why? Because, as he notes, opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth.
If you walk around telling casual friends, acquaintances, or even family members your massive, audacious goals, they will often inadvertently destroy your confidence.
They'll mock it, or give you a dozen logical reasons why it won't work.
Because they are projecting their own limitations onto you. Their fear of failure is triggered by your ambition.
When you open yourself up to unsolicited opinions, you are letting their failure consciousness infect your delicately built success consciousness.
Protecting your psychological runway is just as important as protecting your financial runway.
A closed mouth and open ears are the hallmarks of a strategist. Now, this brings us to what is easily the most controversial and frankly unexpected part of this text.
We are moving into the unseen forces.
We're talking about sex transmutation, the brain, and the sixth sense.
Right.
I have to admit, reading the phrase mystery of sex transmutation in a 1937 business textbook threw me for a loop.
It is definitely the most provocative chapter, and it often alienates modern readers who don't understand the psychological context.
But it is conceptually vital to his entire theory of energy, drive, and creativity. Let's unpack it carefully.
Hill claims that the desire for sexual expression is the most powerful of human stimuli.
Transmutation means taking that intense physical biological energy and instead of dissipating it through overindulgence, consciously redirecting it into creative, professional, and financial action.
If we strip away the 1930s terminology and look at it through the lens of modern psychology, neurobiology, and behavioral endocrinology, he is talking about the psychology of drive.
He is talking about harnessing primal dopaminergic energy.
He argues that the most successful salespeople, the greatest entrepreneurs, and the most effective leaders all possess an undeniable personal magnetism.
A relentless vitality that draws people to them.
That magnetism isn't an accident, and it isn't just charisma. It is raw, primal energy that the elite have learned to channel obsessively into building their empires.
They don't suppress their physical nature, they elevate it.
When the mind is stimulated by this intense emotion, it vibrates at a higher frequency of thought. It enters what modern psychologists would call a flow state.
And when the brain is operating at this elevated state, the text says it acts as both a broadcasting and a receiving station.
It can pick up hunches and inspirations from the ether. This is what he calls the sixth sense, the absolute apex of the philosophy.
The sixth sense sounds mystical, but it is essentially intuition supercharged by extreme focus and elevated energy.
It's that moment when you're in the shower or out for a run and a complex business problem that you've been agonizing over for weeks suddenly solves itself perfectly in your mind.
Your subconscious, which has been processing the specialized knowledge in the background, delivers the answer to your conscious mind.
To actively cultivate this intuition, Hill used a technique that I find both bizarre and brilliant.
He held imaginary council meetings in his mind just before going to sleep. He called them his invisible counselors.
He would imagine sitting at a boardroom table with historical figures he admired deeply: Abraham Lincoln, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thomas Paine, Charles Darwin, Henry Ford.
He was actively using his imagination to reshape his own character through mental simulation.
He would address them directly in his mind. He'd say, "Mr. Emerson, I desire to acquire from you the marvelous understanding of nature."
Or he'd ask Lincoln for his sense of justice and resilience.
He was taking the traits he admired most in these historical figures and using auto-suggestion to program those traits into his own subconscious.
It's a profound psychological hack. By imagining what these great leaders would do or say, he was bypassing his own ego, his own fears, and accessing the deepest, most objective parts of his analytical mind.
This is very similar to what Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime partner, talks about when he discusses using mental models.
You synthesize the wisdom of the greats so you can deploy it when you are under pressure.
Think about how you can use this tomorrow. You're facing a brutal negotiation, or you have to execute a massive pivot in your company that is going to upset a lot of people.
Before you make the decision, sit in a quiet room and imagine your ultimate mentors. Ask yourself, what would Steve Jobs do in this exact situation?
How would Warren Buffett look at this balance sheet?
What would Elon Musk do with this engineering bottleneck?
You force your brain to step outside of its own fear and model their decision-making frameworks.
But none of this works if your psychological engine is leaking oil.
As powerful as all these accelerators are, desire, faith, planning, the mastermind, transmutation, there is a saboteur waiting to destroy the entire system.
We must confront the ultimate destroyers of wealth. Hill calls them the unholy trio indecision, which crystallizes into doubt, and the two of them blend to become fear.
They germinate and grow without you even noticing, and there are 6 basic fears that plague humanity.
The author states that before any of this philosophy can work, you must actively clear your mind of these 6 ghosts of fear.
Well, let's list them. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death.
Hill points out that the fear of poverty is the most destructive, particularly in a capitalistic society.
It literally paralyzes the faculty of reason, destroys imagination, kills off self-reliance, and undermines enthusiasm.
The text cites the 1929 Wall Street crash as a massive worldwide manifestation of this exact fear.
Millions of people suddenly vibrating with the fear of poverty, making irrational decisions, pulling liquidity out of the market, and creating a self-fulfilling economic collapse.
We see the micro version of this every day. When a founder operates from a fear of poverty, they make desperate, short-term decisions.
They take bad capital from toxic investors. They discount their products heavily just to get cash flow, destroying their brand equity in the process.
You cannot build long-term wealth when your daily operating system is panicked survival.
And equally insidious, especially for modern professionals, is the fear of criticism.
Oh, this one kills more startups and career pivots than actual economic failure.
The fear of what the neighbors will say. What your old college friends will think if your startup fails.
What your parents will say if you quit your prestigious, high-paying corporate law job to try something highly unconventional.
The fear of criticism forces brilliant people into a life of quiet desperation.
It makes them settle for marriages they hate, jobs they despise, and lives that are fundamentally unfulfilling, all because they are terrified of the judgment of people who, frankly, aren't even paying that much attention to them.
It stifles innovation, because true innovation always looks like a bad idea to the majority of people at first.
And to protect ourselves from these fears, we invent alibis. The text lists 57 famous alibis.
If I only had time.
If I had money.
If I could just get a break.
If I hadn't failed in the past.
If my family understood me.
If conditions were just a little better.
He brilliantly calls these alibis brain children. We create them, and human nature dictates that we protect our own creations.
We nurture these excuses. We use them to explain away our failures because confronting our true inadequate selves requires a level of brutal honesty and courage that most people simply refuse to muster.
Cognitive dissonance is painful, so we soothe it with an alibi.
It's so much easier to blame the Federal Reserve or your boss or your spouse or the algorithm than to look in the mirror and say, I lacked the persistence and the definite purpose to make this happen.
And there's a final seventh basic evil mentioned, susceptibility to negative influences.
This is about curating the environment you allow yourself to exist in. Think of your mind as a physical estate, a beautiful piece of real estate.
If you leave the front gates wide open, anyone walking down the street can just dump their trash right into your living room.
Their negativity, their macroeconomic fears, their cheap opinions on why your business model won't work.
You have to put an armed guard at the door of your mind.
You cannot afford to let negative influences take root in your subconscious because your subconscious will accept them as truth and act on them.
You have absolute control over only one thing in the entire universe, your own thoughts. That is your ultimate prerogative.
The practical takeaway here is liberating, but it requires discipline. You must kill the habit of worry.
Reach a blanket decision that nothing in life is worth the price of worry.
Recognize that alibis are just sophisticated lies you tell yourself. Burn the alibis.
We are coming to the end of this incredibly dense deep dive.
So what is the ultimate synthesis? What do we take away from 25 years of research into the greatest fortunes in American history?
The overarching lesson is that wealth, in whatever form you desire it, whether it's financial freedom, a massive enterprise, or deep personal impact, is not a byproduct of luck. And it's not just a byproduct of physical labor.
It is fundamentally a state of mind.
It requires a highly specific, definite purpose, backed by unshakable faith, executed through organized, specialized knowledge, sustained by persistent willpower, and protected fiercely from the negativity of the outside world.
This philosophy is not for everyone. It is for ambitious individuals who are willing to take brutal, unflinching accountability for their own outcomes.
If you are someone who believes entirely in luck, or if you view yourself fundamentally as a victim of external circumstances, this text will deeply offend you.
It places the burden of success entirely on your own shoulders. There are no excuses left.
And for the right type of person, that burden is a massive privilege. It means you are in control.
I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought from the text. Something to mull over as you go into your next meeting, pitch your next client, or sit down to plan your next venture.
The book notes that mental telepathy is effectively real in a business sense.
Not in a sci-fi way, but in a psychological way. If you approach a negotiation, a pitch, or a new project with the underlying vibration of fear, doubt, or desperation, you broadcast that fear to the entire room through your microexpressions, your tone, and your posturing.
The author says that even a dog knows when you are afraid, and trust me, the free market is much smarter than a dog.
People pick up on your internal state. You transmit your dominant thoughts whether you open your mouth or not.
So as you step into your business tomorrow, as you sit down at your desk or open your laptop, ask yourself, what frequency are you broadcasting to the market?
Are you transmitting the 57 alibis of failure? Are you radiating the fear of criticism and poverty? Or are you transmitting the absolute, unshakable certainty of your own success?
You are the architect of that frequency.
Keep digging, keep building, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.